Cerco una persona del segno zodiacale Acquario per metterci il mio pesce. Per informazione scrivetemi su WhatsApp.
That is how we're going to start every single show from now on, is that terrific person. I don't know if it's a man or a woman. I'm not sure. It doesn't matter. Of course, we're not discriminating on this show. But I think that's the best way to start every morning, don't you? With a lovely person like that welcoming you to the show. And just a little bit of, I think it's astrology that is mentioned in there. I mean, it's very difficult to tell. It's Italian, but only just. The Gareth Cliff Show this morning, live from Cape Town. Well, that's where I am. I'm not wearing earrings. These the earphones. Ben said I look like I'm wearing. What did you say it was? Ben is in studio, by the way, in Johannesburg.
Yeah,
you said it looked like.
It looks like emo earrings.
What do you think of that lovely human at the beginning who started the show for us?
What were they pulling? They look like a beetle plow.
I don't know, but it's terrific. It really is, and you'll get to like it because we're going to play it every day until it drives you mad. That's the plan. I've got fake news CNN in the background. Isn't that great?
Nice. Are they still sore from last week?
Oh, listen, I mean, I had them on. I went to sleep last night watching a little bit of it. It was like comedy because they are there's so much gay crying on CNN. It's ridiculous. I mean, I've never seen so much gay crying in my life.
Well, Gareth, I mean, they do have degrees.
Go my way. Where?
They do have degrees in gay crying, so I guess you got to, exhibit that.
Anyway, I did notice that the main hosts on CNN, that chick, you can just see her in the background. She's still got the same set that Larry King had back in like 1989. So they obviously don't have any more money. And the best news is, while we're talking about America, The View, which is obviously that revolting show with those absolutely unmarriable women on it. Like Joy Behar and Whoopi Goldberg, and I mean, just Sunny Hostin, just the most terrible people in all of America. They are so tender and sensitive since last week, which of course I love. But apparently their bosses have said they've got to now, they're on the lookout for a Trump supporter to join the cast of The View, and that person is going to just balance things out a little. I mean, can you imagine a worse job than that? You have to go into work with those harpies every single day, knowing that they absolutely hate you, knowing that they're going to basically try and take you down every day. Imagine being attacked by the vultures on that show every day and having to sit there. There's no amount of money you could pay me to do it. Although, I mean, it could be fun if you're the sort of person who doesn't mind a bit of combative to and fro in your life, like an MMA fighter or something. I think you could have a lot of fun there.
Well, they should just have they should have a rotating cast, because firstly, this woman will be good looking, which will be a huge turn up for that show. And secondly, I don't think anyone should be subjected to that much. And this whole thing about being labeled a Trump supporter, they're just better people. We've seen it. We've seen it in the last 6 months. They're just better, more presentable, more agreeable people.
Yeah, they've yet to show me, like they keep showing me these videos of like all Trump's picks for various jobs in the US government. And I don't know, the left in America seem to think that this is going to put me off. But all it's doing is making me more excited. I mean, I see guys like this new Secretary of Defense, and I think, what an awesome dude. I would love him to be in government in South Africa. And then they show, the pick for Director of National Intelligence, which is Tulsi Gabbard, and they've got this video on the internet of her like shooting stuff, and she looks so goddamn fine and hot and terrific and like in control. And I think, don't make me like them even more. But to the left, it's like, oh my God, she's got a gun, run, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's weird with the whole thing with the left is that when they got more power, all these cretins started coming out of the woodwork. And the opposite's happening. It's like, oh, exactly what you just said. Now the good people are coming out of the woodwork again, because that's what we're kind of put to.
Yeah.
And I hate to say good and sound so superior, but they are just more. Look at all those people. They're capable. They've got achievements. They've got backgrounds. Mm-hmm. They've got actual accolades behind their names. They're not some like gender studies person or someone who's got like a new take on bullshit.
with the blue hair and the you know, it's terrible. So I see Mo Rabbit says, could Tulsi Gabbard get any hotter? No, I mean not when you see her on the shooting range. Looks pretty fantastic if you ask me. I see Mapelo saying Jimmy Kimmel must be the gayest crier of all. Well, I can't believe that he actually is going to see through his promise. He's finishing his last show on the 20th of January. That's the day Trump is inaugurated. And then he's flying to Italy or somewhere in Europe to live forever. And I'm so happy for America, but I'm sad for Europe. I mean, how awful for them.
So Jimmy Kimmel's an interesting story, because if you go back in the day, there was a thing called The Man Show where Joe Rogan and Doug Stanhope were together. Jimmy Kimmel was part of that, okay? It was the ultimate like frat boy show. And even by today's standards, you know, you look at it and go, wow, that's pretty out there. And he went through that whole social castration phase, which has culminated him to being this absolute queef that you see nowadays. It's absolutely amazing.
Queef.
And you got to think that there's some woman behind that.
No, so he did. He got married to a very attractive woman, but you know what happens to a lot of these guys? Like sometimes, rare occasions, and again, this is not an attack on the girls, because I tend to find that, you know, when guys get together, we say some things and then they immediately assume that we're attacking them. But what we're doing is talking about them because they're primary in our world.
Yes.
We think about women far more than we think about anything else. So we have opinions about women where we haven't got opinions about, I don't know, Canderel. You know, I don't think about Canderel all that often.
No.
So Jimmy did. He got married to a very, very attractive, very, very smart, sort of headstrong woman. And because he's a bit of a queef, as you put it, quite rightly, he was malleable. Someone said to me a long time ago, and it's some good advice: men marry women or get together with women, hoping they'll never change, but they do, because we all do. And women get with men hoping they can change them, but they can't.
Yeah.
So I think that's still as true as ever. Some women can, and usually I'd say it's a 50-50. I know some guys who have definitely been improved by their wives or girlfriends, definitely. And I can wholeheartedly side with the girlfriend and say, you know what, you've made this guy a better human being. And then 50% of the time, they just make them absolute soppy, queefy, drippy, pathetic, like lame, sad human beings who just are a shadow of the former selves.
Yeah.
And listen, we've got to say that sometimes the guy really likes that. Sometimes he just enjoys being a submissive, little limp-wristed poof.
Which is also quite weird. Sorry, Gareth, that's not a technical question. Flex, are we stuck on this one angle? Because it's very weird that Gareth's so tiny on the screen, but he's doing most of the talking here.
Yeah, they'll put me up on when they eventually learn in 2035 about switching cameras. Then we'll
we go.
Full screen. There we go. You see, they can do what they meant to do.
It's just, I mean, it's the Gareth Cliff show. So just call me old fashioned, but I think your face should be the biggest thing here. Yeah, Gareth, I think it's
Ben, I'd like you to have a session with the producers afterwards.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing around what you're saying there. But, you know, I was actually having a conversation with someone recently about the kind of men that they were looking for, or attributes. And women have this weird idea around like softening men and making them malleable, as you say. But ultimately, that's the most boring thing in the world. And you give a woman a bottle of wine and ask them how soft they want men to be. That opinion will change very quickly. It's great it's great to think you have the ability to soften somebody, but ultimately you want someone who's going to be more of a headstrong sort of leader kind of person. And that'll always be a fundamental of life. So Jimmy, it's an ongoing story we should kind of follow, because if he's like this and then they go to Europe, that wife will probably go, okay, well, this has been fun, but now you've done all of this for me. You've pushed back on nothing. Bored.
Yeah, Congo Chris agrees with you. Jimmy Kimmel's a wet queef.
Yeah.
Gray says, controversial take, women shouldn't be in combat roles at all. So this is what the new Secretary of Defense said. I'm all for this. As a man who has grown up with military ancestors going back as far as I can tell, I feel like the biggest loser in my family, because every man going back on my dad's family tree, as far as I can go to like 1600, fought in some war, was wearing uniform at some point in their lives. And I have no experience of the military myself. I feel like I maybe should have done something. I'm not going to make excuses, but at that stage, South Africa was going through like just a clusterfuck in our military. I don't think it's ever been any good since then. So I'm not sad that I didn't join our military, but I'm sad that I didn't do any military work at all as a young man. However, I feel kind of strongly that women shouldn't be on the front lines. I know that they can be. I know that we should allow that if a woman really wants to be in the Army, Navy, Air Force, if you're in America, the Marines, she should be allowed to pursue a career in those armed forces. And I think that's great. There should be an opportunity afforded to everybody. But I don't think it's right that women should fight on the front lines.
I totally agree.
Prefer for men to be putting their lives on the line to protect women. Call me old-fashioned, but that's what I like.
Yeah, but it's a combat role. That's the key thing there. I think there's so many different things to do in the military because it's not just about picking up a gun. There's strategic roles, there's supply chain roles, there's all kinds of other things that you could have a woman to be amazing at. But it's just a very weird thing to have to try force them into this thing because, again, no woman grows up going, I want to be a frontline soldier. It's this power thing again. It's like, well, we can do everything. Sure, but like you don't have to. The whole thing about combat is to be rough, to be merciless, and just it hurts. But then that guy says that this week, and that's controversial. No, women should be in better places.
I think it comes from the same places that would have criticized him anyway. I don't think that anyone who said, "Oh my God, no, women should be allowed to have combat roles." I don't think those people actually seriously want women standing in the front lines with guns being shot at by, terrorists in Afghanistan. I can't imagine that anyone would want to do that to women unless they're a misogynist, frankly.
Yeah.
But feminists toy with this idea that men and women are completely the same, and they're not. I mean, it's just a denial of reality. It's like I had this argument in inverted commas with someone on Twitter yesterday, because I said I'm tired of like South African journalists who think that they not only have some kind of moral high ground by having not supported Trump and by thinking he's a terrible person, but they also think they have a factual understanding of the world because they got this election wrong. And I'm like, no, these guys are stupid. And the argument broke down along the lines of, it came up because Mandy Wiener, who I've had on the show before, and Mandy has written some terrific books. She understands South Africa and Crom and all that stuff really, really well. But she wrote this article. I didn't read the article because I couldn't be bothered. It was like comparing Elon Musk to the Guptas. And everybody who listens to the show knows I'm impressed by everything that Elon has done. You'd be stupid not to be. You'd have to be dead inside not to think that the rockets and the Teslas and the internet payments businesses that he's been involved in and the money that he's made because people want to pay him to keep on doing cool and incredible shit, to just write that off and to say, no, he's an unimpressive person just because you don't like Donald Trump, to me indicates that you're not comparing apples and apples. And for Mandy to write even that headline is it's beneath her, frankly. So I'm a little disappointed in her. But people were going ballistic yesterday saying, well, Elon's just a puss and Elon's this. And I'm like, guys, when you've done 1/10 of the things that either he or Donald Trump have done, then I'll take you seriously. But you couldn't even figure out what's going on in the election. You got that completely wrong. You were like campaigning for the other side. And everything you've said about politics in the last 10 years has been wrong. I can go back and look at your timeline and you will be wrong everywhere. So don't expect me to take you seriously when you make a shit comparison like that.
Yeah, it's just a weird kind of arrogance. I mean, it goes back to the thing about that Max Dupree thing we spoke about a few weeks ago. These people don't like to be told that they're wrong, but they're objectively wrong. To bring it back to a very base layer. Like I get a lot of things wrong in sport, but I move on and I try to get cleverer. But these people are so up their own arse. They've all got vitamin D deficiencies. And it's so sad. It's just so sad. And like
Yeah.
the hypocrisy of it all. But also, what it comes back to is like the old Nazi kind of Soviet kind of way that, show me the man, I'll show you the crime. That is kind of how they approach journalism now. It's basically they almost sit around and go, okay, well, this guy, and then they'll just find anything on them. They'll put any kind of stupid crumbling agenda onto them, and that's their product. It is so incredibly sad, but because
that's their product,
because they are so deep in this, we saw it in COVID. They've got to double down in the stupid now because they're so invested in this bullshit. But not one of them can say, actually, you know what? Yeah, maybe Garrett's got a point, or maybe we were wrong, because their world doesn't allow for that. Because then it'll be a sign of weakness. Because like piranhas, they'll all just turn on this person, then going, "Oh well, you've lost touch." The blah 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 blah. It is. I
love that you said it's their product, and that's the problem too. Is they've got a sunken cost problem here.
Yes,
is that they've spent all their credibility and all of their career building up stuff that's bullshit. So now they have to stick to it because otherwise they think that they'll be flushing their credibility. I mean, the opportunity here is to do a 180-degree turn and say, you know what, I was wrong, but I'm prepared to improve. I will find out why it is that so many people in the world think I'm a fucking idiot, and I'll try to learn new things and impress you and write about stuff that will make you understand the journey I have to go through with nuances and explanations and deep dives and research. And I'll see if I can win you back, because that would be the clever move to make. You'd access an enormous audience, right? You'd be able to talk to people who normally would have ignored you, and they'll go, we'll give this person a chance. I mean, I've found, like, I've unblocked and I've followed a ton of people in the last year that I would never have ever encountered before, just because they're saying things that are quite interesting and different and thoughtful and make me think, frankly,
So you said that it would be the smart move, but it's also the professional move. Like, you're in an ever-changing fucking world. How is it that you could only have one view on stuff? It boggles the mind. Like, it's just, look what's happened in the last 30 years, 40 years. Everything's changed, right? That's like the one thing it's one thing that's constant all the time. But yet these views stay the same. It's bizarre.
Tabo says something I think is brilliant here. Tabo says, all I'm saying is show me your friends or your political affiliations. I'll tell you who you are.
True.
Spot on. Mary wants to know, where is Simpiwe? Simpiwe had a baby. I think we talked about this on the show a couple of weeks ago. And she is off on maternity leave until January, but she'll be back then. And obviously we wish her well, and it's very, very exciting. I think it took everybody by surprise. But we'll no doubt find out when she comes back. Gray says, Ben, it's women. Women operate on reputational damage and rumor mongering. This is why we don't need women in politics. Sorry, not sorry. Very strident opinion from Gray. I mean, it is true. It is true that reputational damage and rumor mongering are likelier to come because women respond more to those things. Those are like social cues, right?
Yep, of course.
Whereas men respond to what they see and to results and to achievement. Like that's just how we're hardwired. There's nothing wrong with that.
And it's the women that aren't like that who are the sexiest, actually, because that's just really, really great traits that come through. Maybe it's masculine. I
agree. All right, it's 6:21. Why don't we do a little bit of sport? And then Ben's got a fun game for us to play in a little bit. Let's get into some sport and see what's happening in that world, because it is Friday and we want to know what we are looking forward to this weekend. Take it away, Ben.
Well, Gareth, it's obviously the Springboks. Last week, they had a bit of an experimental team against Scotland. And with an experimental team, they won by 17 points and they scored 4 tries and Scotland scored 0 tries. So people were saying, it was close. The Scots were hard done by. The Boks were a bit shabby. Yeah, but still, 4 tries to 0 and a comprehensive win. I think, I listened to that Keo and Zell's podcast, and they always just break the stats down so well. It's like they were 13-3 in that last 10 minutes. It's how you start and how you finish, and they did it so bloody well. And, that Scottish team is meant to be so charismatic and dynamic with the ball in hand. 0 fucking tries. But this week, Russie's made 12 changes. So on average, in the last year or so, they've made 9 changes per game. Because I think, I've been saying this for quite a while on the Bounce shows that Russie knows he's got the players to win 3 World Cups in a row, but how he gets the team to the World Cup is the hard part. I think once they're there, it'll be a massive relief. But they've got to fight against complacency. So they're trying their hardest to not have an A team. Like, as I said, 9 changes on average per game that they go into. So by not having an A team, the guys all know that in the mix, they could all try, they all get a chance to shine. But ultimately, there is a better team. And that is the team that will be playing England on Saturday. So the game's going to be quite late. It's 7:40. So you can do a lot of pre-gaming there and go straight into a big night. So do the English...
by the way, Ben, we had Cooks on the show on Wednesday.
Yes.
And we went off on a tangent about bakuzzis at Loftus, where they fill the back of the bakkie with, they put a tarpaulin in and they fill it with water, and then the oaks sit in there and they basically turn it into a human soup with their beers and their piss and God knows what else.
Yeah.
Lovely. Have you ever seen any of those? There we go. Have you ever seen any of those in real life?
I have actually. Yeah, it's quite a thing. You really know you're good. I've never been in one. I haven't been on one yet, I should say. You really know your mates when you bakoozie with them, and it's almost worth having a bakkie just for this. I mean, it's not like I don't want all my weekends to have bakoozies, but I would like to know that I can have one if I want one.
Well, someone sent me a picture. I'll see if I can get it up before the end of the show this morning to show you. Of someone who's driving, who listened to the show on Wednesday, driving behind somebody with a bakoozie. Obviously, there are no people or water in it, but there was one that was ready to go on the roads in Pretoria. Isn't that exciting?
Yeah, look, it's a real thing for car manufacturers because a lot of bakkies are quite wide, but not quite deep. So I think they should have. If you're struggling to take on the Hiluxes, the Raptors, the Isuzu KB, whatever, just make a deep bakkie, and the Afrikaans people will look at this and go, this is it. They get us. They're trying to engage with us. Make a deep bakoozie. Otherwise, the water only really goes over your sort of crotch, and then if there's a bit of a breeze, that's just really uncomfortable.
Makes you very cold all of a sudden. But yes, someone was awake very early in the comment section this morning about the rugby. This is at like 5:47. Somebody said, "Oh wow, it's exciting. We've got this weekend, we've got this big rugby match. One more sleep and the Springboks take on England." It was JP.
Yeah, JP. It is a big game. So there's obviously going to be no bakoozies at Twickenham, but there will be a Bok onslaught, which I think is going to be something to behold. So I think the Boks, like I said, like pre-tour, this is the game where the Boks are going to click. They're going to have their best team. They're going to run rampant. And I really do believe that, England had this ability to lose games in the same way that we have ability to win games. So they absolutely fucked it last week against Australia. Now, Australia aren't a great side. Yes, I know that they've now won this game and it's really great for them and good for them. It was a really good weekend for the Southern Hemisphere, but they're not a great side. They don't have a lot of great players. They don't have the bench that we have. So this Bok team, I'm going to go with winning by at least 18 points. And I'm being conservative there. I think it's just going to be too good. Sure, England have some great attacking options, but they just don't have the bottle. And they've just lost 2 games in a row. They're going to be desperate. Like 2 a.m. on the Billy's dance floor, trying to buy a girl a drink desperate. It's not a good look for anybody. And the Boks have won 22 out of the last 26.
I just want to update you. Sorry. Billy's no longer exists, obviously. You're talking about Billy the Bums and Fullways, which used to be the place to go. If you were a man who couldn't get laid and it was after 1 a.m. and you were desperate, you could go to Billy's and you would find a taker, right? There'd be somebody there who'd be like, sure. Well, triple divorced woman with 3 kids and all 3 were at their baby daddies. You would find her there. But that place no longer exists, Ben. So you mustn't mislead our audience, who obviously are the kind of people who are in that market sometimes.
Yeah, sorry.
Nowadays they have to go to one of 2 places. There's a place called Sir James, which happens on a Wednesday in Johannesburg. It's sort of in Marlborough, that area. And then the other one is the Wild Side, which also, it's really just divorcees. But maybe that's my experience. Do you agree with those?
Yeah, I went to Wild Side on Saturday. It's definitely where the remaining whites of Joburg go get hammered. It wasn't bad. Hey, they're like the DJs play such shit music though. Fuck, they're annoying, these DJs. Hey, they're just the worst. Like The average age there is over 35, and they're playing this downbeat fucking bullshit with no words. And sure, it makes the 4-person who are on meth, like, they enjoy it, but everyone else is just like, this is so boring. You have a speaker, your ability to play music. In the decades of music, this is the crap you choose. Fuck. It makes me so old to say that, but I mean, it's just common sense. People go out to have fun, not to get like. Back to the rugby. So yes, I would say the Boks are going to absolutely fucking hammer the English this week, and I think everybody would like to see it. You know, this week on the Bounce Show, we spoke about English sports and how people just love to hate England. It's just ingrained in every sports fan's DNA. So much of the same this weekend. Last week, of course, the Irish lost to New Zealand, which was great because Ireland have become like the new England. They're actually the most disliked team in world rugby. They are so unlikable. I think it's the only way to describe it. They're just unlikable. So are their fans. Irish people in general are quite nice from my experience, but put a green rugby jersey on them, they just become pricks. So they were the number 1 ranked team in the world because, I don't know, there's ranking loopholes there. Like, never won a World Cup. But they lost last week to New Zealand. And they've now gone down to 3rd in the world on the ranking. So they haven't even got that, but we're number 1 bullshit to hold on to. Argentina are playing them. That'll be tonight at 10 o'clock. So I still think Argentina aren't quite strong enough to beat Ireland, but I sure as hell will be cheering them on, and I hope they do. Tomorrow, Scotland taking on Portugal at 5. And then France will be the late game. They are hosting New Zealand at 10. New Zealand done bloody well here. They beat England. They beat Ireland. And now they've got a slightly stronger team than last week, are taking on the French. The French, of course, are kind of just as hurt as Ireland for losing to the Boks in the World Cup. And as great as DuPont
and losing 2 world wars, but who's counting?
Well, there's also that. Yeah, they just don't do well at world events. I mean, look, the Sevens team won gold at the Olympics, and DuPont can shoot fireballs out of his arsehole, but it doesn't matter. You've got to win the big games in rugby, and this is a big game. So France will know this, and they'll obviously go into this one with a lot of desire, I think. Today in AFCON. So the AFCON qualifiers, Bafana playing against Uganda at 3 o'clock. So, of course, in Uganda, you can't be gay, and you also must not lose. So Bafana only just need 1 point, though, so they can get a draw. They can get a draw here. If they get any less than a draw, then massive problems. Like, this Bafana team is good. They've got a lot of quality players here. I think that Dutchman Bruce, the coach, has a lot going for this team. So we just need the 1 point, but try and win. That's at 3 o'clock today. Every now and again, when this is the year I was going to care the most about football. And it fucking grates me that, you get into the Premier League season, there's cool games happening, momentum happens, and then, international break. This UEFA Nations Cup is being played that nobody cares about. It's bad enough that the Champions League is so elongated and bloated, but now we have to subject ourselves to international breaks for players to get injured at. So I know I'm even going to go through the fixtures. I'm not going to bore you with it because it's UFC 309. Okay, so this is a big weekend for fighting because tomorrow morning, firstly, at 3 a.m. SA time on Netflix, you can watch Jake Paul and Mike Tyson fight.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to ask you about this because people are asking me, and I have no idea what to say here. I don't know anything about Jake Paul. I hate to say it because it's embarrassing, but I've paid zero attention to this guy. And he kind of, I know he's a YouTuber who turned into a fighter.
Yeah,
Doesn't he have like a brother or something who's also called something Paul?
Jake Paul and Logan Paul. Logan Paul's the older one. He fought Floyd Mayweather, but then I think he realized like boxing's a little bit too hard. Whereas Jake Paul has committed himself to the boxing.
Okay, good. I mean, that's great for him. I just don't think it is right for Mike Tyson to do this to himself. He may well win, and it would be fine if he did. And in fact, I'd probably end up just on the basis that I know more about supporting Mike Tyson anyway. He's this legendary boxer. He's got this reputation which precedes him. He's a real character. I think he's got an enormous fan base all over America. If I just went on that, I'd say like, okay, obviously I'm a Mike Tyson fan. But I've got a problem with like older guys who have been in their prime and they ruin their legacy and reputation. And I feel like this goes for music stars. I mean, we were talking about this on the show, I think last Friday, or it could have been Monday. I don't remember, but we were saying, some of these guys must just quit while they're ahead. No one wants to see Phil Collins with the rheumatoid arthritis trying to play the drums, not playing them as well. You don't want to see Bruce Springsteen trying to crackle through a song which used to be just, an absolute banger. And of course we love Bruce Springsteen, but Jesus, know when to quit. I don't want to see Mike Tyson being taken out by some YouTuber. I would prefer to have his reputation held intact forever. Am I being boring?
No, I mean, in principle, I obviously agree with you. And Mike Tyson's 58. Jake Paul, I think, is 27. And Jake Paul, in the last however long since he started this whole thing, he's committed to being a boxer. Like he's got a gym. He does everything right. He's improved a hell of a lot. But this is also what sport is. Sport is entertainment. So you can all those things I agree with you on. But who else is going to, like, how many times do we talk about boxing anywhere in general conversation? Seldom, because it's kind of boring.
No, we don't.
We don't really know these people, and it's not that entertaining. And boxing itself is quite a shit sport. But boxing in fundamental is quite simple. Two guys get in the ring. One of them's going to win through hitting the other guy harder and more frequently. So that's exactly what's going to happen. And the fact that it's an old legend called Mike Tyson and a rising person who has captured this industry and is making more money than any of these people, he's still a boxer. He's a professional fighter. He's an entertainer. So this fight, if you look at it in actual boxing terms, is that Jake Paul's done well against MMA fighters. But now, when you're an MMA fighter, you have various skill sets. That's where the mixed martial arts comes from. So if you have 10 hours of a day, okay, a hypothetical 10 hours to train in MMA, you will put probably 2 hours into conditioning and stamina. You probably put 4 to 5 hours into grappling, jiu-jitsu, groundwork, all that kind of stuff. You'll put about an hour or two into recovery, and then the remaining hours will probably go into your striking, because that's how it works and the priority of how you condition yourself. So Jake Paul's a boxer. He just practices the boxing, the hitting with the hands. So when an MMA fighter fights against him, they don't have the knockout power. They haven't got the ability to knock him out. Simple as that. And that's why he's won. Mike Tyson, at the age of 58, he's only been hitting things for all this time. He is a strong man.
Right.
So now Jake Paul's fighting against a guy who can actually knock him out. And we saw it against Tommy Fury, an actual boxer who beat Jake Paul. He put him in situations where he didn't have an answer to it, because boxing and MMA are two very different things. It's incredibly different. So I'm going to say Mike Tyson will win this, because Jake Paul as well, what he's done is that he always allows these guys to just get tired and he picks them off. You don't pick Mike Tyson off because he knows how to box. It's just like when Floyd Mayweather fought against Logan Paul. He dictated what happened there because he is an actual boxer. So sure, Jake Paul's going to have the stamina. He'll have the gas tank. He'll have all those things that could take him to 10 rounds. Mike Tyson's 58. Condition yourself all you want. You haven't got the endurance. But Mike Tyson says, all right, I just need 2 rounds with this guy. And he knows how to box. It's going to be great. I love the fact that Jake took this fight. And I think it'll be great because he will lose this.
I mean, you flashed a picture up there, Flex and James, of Tyson and Paul kind of doing their usual, they do these intimidating kind of weigh-ins and all that sort of shit. Smack talk, and we love it. But I mean, like, Mike Tyson does not look bad. How old did you say he's 58? He's
58. Obviously he'll look good. He's got the genetics, and he's just a strong dude.
Sure.
He's built
and
like
he is a monster. I think it would be a very sad thing if he does get like beaten here. I think it would be a bad thing for his legacy. If you say he's going to win, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, I really do think he's going to win. There's so many pros for both fighters in this, but boxing is boxing. It's the dark arts, all this kind of stuff. It's just, again, go back to the Floyd Mayweather versus Logan Paul thing to look at a few nuances about how an old hand can control a young gun, so to speak. Boxing is hectic. Don't try fight against boxers.
Michael John says in the comments, Ben, it is also about the gloves. When your hands are protected, you can hit harder, much harder.
Yeah.
The real Big Mike, says Steve, is going to floor him. Now that would be a fight I'd watch.
Wow. If
apparently
Big Mike...
in his prime, Tyson could hit an 8-year-old clean off his neck. Not sure how they calculate that. An 8-year-old's head clean off his... Why would you measure the ability to hit by whether or not you could take an 8-year-old's head off, Carl? That's a little bit upsetting and horrible. Tyson gave him a puss clap, was obviously staged though. But Bitcoin Bud saying, I hope Mike wins by a knockout. Yeah, I'll watch. Not post the fact. I'm not going to wake up at 3 a.m. to watch this, but I think Ben's right. It is entertainment, right?
Yeah,
let's get into it.
And just to get back to Grant's thing there, my only fear or worry about this thing is if in the contract Mike can't win, because these things there's a lot of skullduggery that goes with boxing, and this is like a prize fight, so to speak. It's not sanctioned by all the sort of big federations. There might be a contract, which I'm pretty sure has happened with the previous fights that Jake Paul has had, that you cannot knock him out and you cannot win. So that would be my only thing.
Right.
Call me a skeptic, but that would be my only issue with that.
Yeah.
But Gareth, getting into UFC, because this has been one of the most overdue fights for quite some time now. John Jones is seen as the greatest of all time in mixed martial arts. He's never lost. He's got up to heavyweight. He's got the heavyweight title. And he's fighting against Stipe Miocic, who hasn't fought in 4 years, but he was the most prolific heavyweight in that he's defended the title 5 times, which doesn't sound like a lot because, well, it's not. But heavyweights, there's so few fighters. There's so few guys. It's not exactly like a division of incredible stats. But these two are fighting because it's the ultimate legacy fight. But it's taken too long. So people are almost not interested about it. But because it's John Jones, everyone's getting together. He'll absolutely win that fight and he may retire. The 2 fights below that are actually going to be huge entertaining because Michael Chandler, he hasn't fought in 2 years. He's been waiting for Conor McGregor to fight him because that was the promise. And then McGregor's just, he's such a fucking write-off of a human being, unfortunately. So this poor oak has not fought in 2 years. He's fighting against Charles Oliveira, who used to hold the title in the lightweight division. He unfortunately lost that. And he's been thereabouts. He's got more submission wins, more finishes than anybody, I think, in the UFC. That's going to be a great fight. And the fight below that is Bo Nickel, who is the future of the middleweight division. I think this guy is amazing. Everyone does as well. He hasn't fought many people yet because he is still so young. But he's fighting against this really ripped Scottish oak called Paul Craig, who will give him his first proper test. So I still think Bo Nickel's going to win that one. But 3 pretty entertaining fights for UFC 309, and that'll be at Madison Square Gardens. Again, it's like a big legacy kind of thing. So I would say you've got a fantastic weekend of fighting. There is golf on. It's the final event at the DP World Tour in Dubai. And there's cricket today at the Wanderers. The India will be taking on SA. It's a 4-match series. Which
India, huh?
The India. It's a 4-match series. It's pretty fucking stupid because India currently lead 2-1. So the best we can do in this last game is for SA to draw. They sort of bottled it a bit at Centurion, and they ended up losing by, I think, 11 runs. So... yeah, again, entertaining. Sure. Wanderers is always a great place to watch cricket. It means the traffic around my apartment is going to be fucked, but I'll take it. It's a good sporting weekend.
All right.
But the box at 7:40 on Saturday, that is all you need to know, care, and be excited about, really.
Right. So a few comments here. Bo Nickel will win this one, says Bitcoin, but he's strong. Greg says John Jones said he's fighting Pereira next.
You fucking way.
Sangam Petra says, imagine losing to Jake Paul. Yeah, I mean, that would be embarrassing. And then my mate Alex Cage, who's living in Hong Kong at the moment, says, couple of rule changes, 8 by 2-minute rounds and 14-ounce gloves. Entertainment fight for Netflix, meant to be high-paced.
Oh, wow, okay.
Paying attention to the detail.
Yeah, it's great. Okay. It's great to have guys that care to that sort of finite thing. 8 2-minute rounds. I think that might even help Tyson more.
Yeah, because if anything, he's gonna beat him probably by endurance and kind of, sticking it out. I don't know. I'm just gonna watch. I'm no expert in this field.
There is so much about that guy and how you approach a sport. He was with Francis Ngannou when Francis Ngannou essentially beat Tyson Fury. So it's not like he hasn't been in and around boxing, and he knows what he wants to do in this fight. Whereas Jake Paul knows what he wants to do, but isn't sure he can do it. Whereas Mike has done it all before. I think it's interesting. I think it's quite fun. And yes, Tyson's going to win.
All right. So there's one thing before we move on and start a game that I think we'll all have fun with this morning. And by the way, we've got a guest popping in a little bit later on. I'm thrilled that John van der Reet, who's of course the author of the Spud series of books, which have probably been about the most successful fiction books written in South Africa in the last 20 years. I don't think it's saying too much to say that, right? Is there anyone who even comes close? Spud, the story of this kid, it's semi-autobiographical. He's told me before. We've had a discussion or two before on this. I've interviewed the guys around that show of his the movies they made out of the Spud books, including John Cleese and really just some terrific entertainment. He's going to be joining us a little later on because he's got a new book called Spud the Reunion, which has just come out. So I think it'll be fun to talk to John again. He'll be in studio with Ben in the next hour. Don't go away. Don't miss that. One of the big stories in the news this week, and I only really caught on to this yesterday. Some people are completely losing their shit over it, is the illegal Zama Zama miners who have been caught underground or who are staying underground because they don't want to be arrested. And apparently the minister in the presidency, Kumbutso Njaveni, has stated that the government will attempt to force them to the surface. They will smoke them out, according to her. Near Stilfontein, where an estimated 4,000 illegal miners,
Wow.
4,000 of them are reportedly either staying underground or they're trapped underground. However, there's skepticism regarding this number, some suggesting it might be closer to 2,000. But they're sort of coming out in dribs and drabs as well, running out of food. So why this is controversial is because, first of all, they're illegal miners, right? So if you break the law, and while you're breaking the law, something terrible happens to you, then it is not the responsibility of the government to rescue you. The second thing is that it seems that this has turned into like a human rights conversation in certain parts of the internet. People saying, oh, well, people are people and you've got to look after them. And it's not their fault that they had to be Zama Zama miners because they couldn't get other work. I don't know if I'm particularly partisan about this. I don't care about Zama Zama miners and whatever happens to them. They know the risks when they become miners. They know that this is a very, very dangerous, very scary job. I'm not particularly interested in whether they're South Africans or not. But if the government finds them without papers, they are in trouble. It's a very, very dangerous business. You go underground, tunnels can collapse, terrible things can happen. They're trying to bring out little bits of gold or whatever else they're trying to get out of the ground. It's not a regulated environment. There are no protections for people like this. It's not run by companies who can be held responsible if something terrible happens. So I don't know how to respond to this. I don't know if I have very strong feelings either way, but damn, has the internet been full of noise. People are furious about this, and they're even more furious about the fact that the minister said they will smoke them out. They've called Njaveni's comments inhumane and uncaring and insensitive, especially given the dangerous conditions these miners face and the lure of high gold prices, principally from Lesotho and Mozambique. The situation continues to develop as Operation Valamgordi seeks to disrupt illegal mining operations. So I don't know. Any strong feelings on this?
Yeah, it's difficult because it also then brings in a whole like land question, right? So who owns the land? Is it the mine owners that have this? Because I mean, I'm under the impression that a lot of these mines are left open because it becomes too expensive to actually mine, so therefore it's just not worth it. That's why there's a gap for Zama Zamas. But then who buys this? I mean, do they like, so let's just say they come up with a big rock and there's a bit of gold in there, or do they have smelters down there? This is more what I'm interested in. Where do they sell this? Do they just go into Witbank and then there's like a cash converter that just takes raw gold?
Goon says she was a dick about it, Gareth. And Mo Rabbit says, I'm with the minister. So just in the comment sections, we've got completely varying opinions here. Lito says, only keyboard warriors are mad about this. Why don't they go and save them? Well, this is the problem, right? Is that everybody wants to be seen on the internet to be a nice person. And so they say things like, oh, it's so terrible that these illegal miners are underground and it's so unfair and someone's got to help them. And now we must spend state resources and time, taxpayers' money on trying to rescue people who've put themselves in that situation. But will those people who are insisting on treating these miners humanely, will those people go and do anything? Of course not. We all know that's bullshit. They're not going to do a damn thing, right?
Yeah. Well, keyboard warriors aren't a thing, but I mean, literally, like, I don't know if you heard me there, but where does the gold go? I want to know more about that. Like, what's this process? Because if it's so illegal, then don't you just follow where the money is and then go to the source and say, right, is it legal to then like acquire gold in this way? Because I mean,
Zach Lesupi says, I'm 3 kilometers away from these trapped Zama Zamas. I can tell you nobody gives a shit here if they live or die. Life goes on as normal. There's some very hard opinions out there too. And I'm kind of tending more towards that, right? They're trying to put the illegal immigration narrative onto the illegal miners story, says that Don Kitty. Bitcoin Butt says, Carte Blanche released a new video showing Pilgrim's Rest, Sabi, and areas close to Mbombela being taken over by the Zama Zamas, and the mountains are being dug up there. Yeah, I mean, these guys, you know, there's such a thing as mineral rights that you have to own in order to dig. And obviously for anybody who cares about environmental sustainability, they should be primarily interested in keeping these miners out of these tunnels. Alex says, not just the gold that they're going for. A lot of those shafts have old copper power cables that they're taking to sell. That's interesting.
Ah, right.
So I don't know. And Ben, to answer your question, Carl says, apparently they mix the gold with legally mined gold, so it's untraceable.
Ah, okay. Well, yeah, look, the criminal organizations are always quite sophisticated, but it is. It's like, you know, the original frontier people were mining for gold, and it was a long, long time ago. It's just weird seeing it. Same kind of principle, but the world has changed so much. And that's what it comes back to as well, is that you get these people who are so worried about the environment. Well, this is an actual environmental issue, because if they're digging up new places, and especially in Mpumalanga, you know, the one thing that Mpumalanga is going for is got natural beauty. If you're going to dig it up and fuck it up, then it's a big problem.
Right. Apparently, I've got to move this so I don't get the TV in as much because they're worried about YouTube giving us copyright issues. Is that better? If it's just half of it, that make a difference? Okay, well, we'll see. Notice how the illegal miners story has diverted all the attention from the food poisoning tuck shops owned by other foreign nationals. Now, that's another big story that we haven't covered on this show already, but it's a very worrying situation. There are people who are very concerned. Kids are buying food from the spaza shops, and they're being poisoned. Kids are dying, and kids are getting very, very sick from food at certain tuck shops, certain spaza shops across the country. I don't know much more than what's been in the news, but it is interesting, according to Lovely Lady Lee, that the illegal miners story is a diversion from that story. And I don't know much more than I've already said here. It's illegal to buy gold in that format. Good thing I wasn't watching porn, says Grant. Gareth, we know all the big wigs are involved. Al Jazeera showed that in a show last year. Well, yeah, there was that show about Zimbabwe, right? That show about the Zim gold cartel as well, which is going on. I don't know much about that either. So I'm afraid these are just stories I thought we would refer to. Otherwise, we're not paying attention to the world around us. But I don't know much about them, and I don't have extremely strong opinions. Certainly not until I find out more. Gareth, even half of CNN is still more shit than a whole podcast. Just switch it off. All right, yeah, I can do that. Let's just keep people calm. There, are you happy now? No more CNN. All right, there we go. Much better. Raven wants to know, is it the polony again? Look, nobody should be eating polony. No matter how cheap, no matter how hungry, no matter what's going on in your life, do not eat polony. Is that good advice, Ben? You're more into nutrition than I am.
No, it's really good advice, Gareth. It really is. You've just got to have better. You've got to do better in life. You absolutely do. This office that I used to work at, I would open the fridge to get milk for coffee, and then there'd be a big fucking slab of polony. And I just thought, these people, they have so much of their life ahead of them, and this is what's going to confront them today by choice.
Polony. Ugh. All right, so Ben came up with a really cool idea. I think we're going to have to do this after 7, though. We're kind of running out of time. We're going to play with movies, and we're going to put up a couple of movies. In fact, maybe you can get this ready. Let's set it up, and then we'll do it after 7. The idea being that if you had to summarize the plot of a couple of famous movies, and you had to come up with one line to describe the movie, How would you describe a movie like, for example, Forrest Gump, which is very, very complicated? How would you explain in a funny way and in one line what Forrest Gump is about?
The top of my head, retard, always in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Because
I don't know if you're allowed to use retard, but yes,
yeah,
I like that.
Sorry, I mean, Gareth,
I would say
you put me on the spot there.
I would say a simpleton, maybe, with who enjoys running. It accidentally ends up shaping history while teaching us that life is like a box of chocolates.
Yeah,
and his girlfriend is absolutely horrible to him. That's what I go.
We might need just a few less words there, Cliff.
Oh, is it too long, huh?
Well, I mean, you were going in about he's running. His girlfriend had syphilis. So I think we got to get a little bit tighter. That's what makes the game hard.
One. How about Jaws?
Jaws. I mean, it's such a simple movie. Big fucking shark terrorizes town.
That's it. I was going to go with big fucking shark eats a lot of people.
Just terrorize the entire town. And then, yeah, I mean, I should have watched that again because I would love to see how bad the shark is. We've become so used to everything being so seamless and perfect now. And that back in the day was average. Scary, though, because it was mostly scary because of the soundtrack.
I love Jaws. How about Titanic? Can you come up with a good line for Titanic?
Ultimate game of hit it and quit it. Because I mean,
wow,
because Leo got on the boat, he porked that chick, and then he had a chance to survive. He's like, nope, I'm out, and he just went into the sea. So ultimate game of hit it and quit it.
Yeah, I would say a romance that sinks faster than the ship itself.
Very poetic.
Yeah, especially because there was, and this become the biggest debate ever since the movie first premiered all those years ago. It's like there was space on that door for Leo as well, but she just wasn't budging. You know, that could be the wrap up for that one. Okay, do you want to try one more before we tee it up for everybody else to have a go? How about Pulp Fiction? That's a good movie. Complicated as hell. How do you summarize that?
Sure. Bruce Willis almost gets butt fucked.
Yeah, I would say a royale with cheese and plenty of violence.
Yeah, there's just so much going on there. But if you were to work out why is Bruce Willis almost getting butt fucked, it does actually reveal a lot more of the plot. So, yeah, you can have so many stabs of that one.
I watched a little bit of this. It was on the TV last night, and when I got sick of CNN, fake news CNN, I went to one of the movie channels, and they had Django Unchained on, which is also like a really fun movie if you're just into the violence. And I thought about that one and how I'd describe that. It's just like basically slave gets his revenge. I mean, lots of people, lots of white racist hicks get shot in the chest and head.
Well, you could probably say slave gets his motherfucking revenge because Samuel L. Jackson's in that movie.
Yeah.
I actually watched something last night about Samuel L. Jackson reviewing his best roles. And he was talking about Snakes in the Plane. And that was meant to be a PG-13 movie or whatever. And he said, not a fuck, because you know the line, I'm so tired of these motherfucking snakes in this motherfucking plane.
Yeah.
That cost them so much money because they had to change the whole rating and everything for the movie. They had to reshoot stuff. But he was all about being in that movie. And then they wanted to call it something else, like Nightmare on Flight something. And he said, no, there's motherfucking planes on this motherfucking, snakes on these planes. That's got to be the title.
Snakes on
That's got to be the title. So he physically made this. He made the title of that movie.
I never watched that movie, I'm afraid. I'm kind of glad I didn't. For God's sake, I just got to switch this thing off because it keeps buzzing. Hang on 1 second. Let me just see if I can do this. There we go. It's on silent. Keep getting stupid messages and stuff. All right, so let's try one more. The Barbie movie. What a shit thing. I haven't seen it, so I don't know enough about the Barbie movie, but I'll give it a go.
to how to show the world you have no balls if you're a guy. Because why else did you watch this movie?
Yeah, I would just say lots of pink and blue, and pink wins. Keep it kind of cryptic.
Fuck,
I don't know what to make of the Barbie movie. Did you watch How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days?
Yeah, everyone had to watch that at some stage. That was like the original. That was like the Pulp Fiction of rom-coms. Everyone,
right?
This is hard. Handsome man.
How would you describe this movie?
Handsome man endures annoying bitch to win a bet. I think it's been a long time since I watched this, but that'd be my step.
I got some funny ones here from people. Barbie gets a vagina is what that Don Kitty says for the Barbie movie. I love that. Keep it in the pink, says Mo Rabbit. Jaws, says Janine. Blood and an incredible soundtrack. That's good. I like that a lot.
Yeah, the soundtrack was what made that.
Raven says Titanic ultimately comes down to commitment issues. And then Grant says Titanic, old, rich, entitled woman remembers her hookup on a boat that sank.
See, this is a good game. You can get.
I like it. Yeah, this is very good. Terrorizes town makes me feel like it's in the town and not in the sea, says that Don Kitty in respect to Jaws. Forrest Gump, says Jethro Hill, says Forrest Gump, the Democrats' ideal candidate. That's good too. I like it. Barbie, Grant says, bunch of woke plastic cunts. Ken bends over and takes it up the arse from Barbie. Oh man. Yeah, Color points out that Samuel L. Jackson is one of the celebrities who wants to leave America because Trump won.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if he's like at the front of the queue or if he's after Whoopi Goldberg in the queue or whatever. There are a lot of very funny memes going around of all of those celebrities on one plane together, all flying out of America. It is kind of funny.
What a shame. I mean, I always respected Samuel L. Jackson. I thought he was fun. Turns out he's just not. And Chris Rock, also a big Kamala fan.
Who knew?
Maybe that's.
I don't know. I think a lot of these guys are just afraid. And by the way, Ben, we've got to quickly before we take a break. I have to refer to Wednesday's interview with that woman who was taken to Epstein Island.
Yes.
I mean, what a story. If you haven't heard it and you missed out on that somehow, you need to go back and listen to it. It's the most incredible. She says she saw Jeffrey Epstein do shape-shifting into a dragon. The woman has stories.
I believe.
I would encourage anybody who hasn't heard it to go and listen to it. It is fascinating.
I believe every word that woman said. I'm all in. She's seen things and endured things that we can never comprehend, and I absolutely believe her.
Yeah, go and listen to it. If you missed the show, go and do it. There's no way I can stipulate that more strongly than you have missed out if you don't go and listen to it. What an incredible tale. And we'll try to get her back again because I think she only just scratched the surface of what happened there. And you could see, I don't know, a lot of people are saying she's talking shit and that she's crazy. And, the comment section is usually skeptical. And that's what I love about the comment section. You can't sell them anything stupid or ridiculous. But I could tell just from the way she was responding to stuff that woman has been traumatized. You can see when someone's got PTSD. And we're talking about PTSD from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's still there.
No, I mean, it's like shakes your whole inner being. You can see it just on her mannerisms. I totally believe her. But I really hope that she has someone helping her with this book because she sounded semi-non-committal. She's like, it might be ready in like 2-3 months. With the story that she has, she needs a solid ghostwriter / person who's going to write this with her. Because, you only get one chance to retell a story like this. And if she goes in with a waffly 200 pages, you know, I mean, obviously, like, I'm not trying to discredit her here, is that she's not an author. She needs someone to really package this thing properly.
Yeah, you see, Kala says Wednesday's interview was a good example of you guys needing to do a bit more fact checking before you allow people on the show. Hey, we've had people, I've famously had some of the world's biggest conspiracy theorists on the show. I'm prepared to give anyone a platform, and if they talk nonsense, it's on them. Don't judge me by the kind of people I bring on. I'm exposing you to people who I find interesting and who the producers decide would be interesting to talk to. And you decide. If you think they're full of shit, then you can say so. And that's what I love, Kala. I said at the beginning of this conversation. If you think someone is full of shit, you call them out in the comment section. I love it. And I will read those comments while they're on the show. Dirk says, we know Epstein and his goonies had everyone on mountains of drugs. She could have totally experienced those things. I think so too. I think that's a very good point that Dirk makes there.
But what was the whole thing about the cloning and the scientists? I think there's something there, because everyone has these like playing God things when they had that much power, right?
She said that she believes that part of the idea here was that they were experimenting with cloning people. Now, if you're going to clone people, like they've cloned sheep and they've cloned other animals, what you need is obviously healthy egg cells. And from what I deduce, what I infer from what she said, again, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but it appears to me that she believes maybe a lot of these women were less sex slaves than they were being harvested for their eggs, so that they could use these eggs to clone very, very rich people who wanted to, you know, create versions of themselves. Now, I mean, this is deep conspiracy theory. I don't know if it's even possible biologically to do this at this stage for human beings. But if that's what she thinks was happening, I mean, it's at very least worth exposing yourself to the possibility, right? And then looking at it. Anyway, we got to take a break. We'll be back with a whole lot more. Ben and I are here to look after you. We've got John van der Reyk joining us in a short while to talk about the Spud reunion book, which is very, very exciting. We'll find out what he's been up to as well. All of that and more on the way. Don't go anywhere.
I'm going to tell you guys a story about a patient of mine. This guy happens to be an IV drug user. Right? He uses heroin. And this guy came prepared, a shoelace in his bag as a tourniquet that he would use as a tourniquet to get his veins, right? And I was failing. I just could not get a vein. This guy was like, nah, let me show you.
That's what they always, that's what they always do.
He pulls this thing out, went tight, like I've never seen an arm go that tight. His arm was swelling up. Managed to find one vein. I want you to look, these veins here. Visiting hours come. It's 3 p.m. This guy says, Doc, I just want to go outside to smoke. Does he not go outside with his friend who came to visit him, who he said was his brother?
To inject.
Brought him heroin to the hospital. Shoots up in the same drip I put in for him. Comes back to the ward high out of his mind.
He's like, I got the drip, I'm ready. Yeah.
I'm ready.
Now, what do you guys know about NASCAR?
It goes round and round in circles.
Correct. That's pretty much the first rule of NASCAR.
And if you don't chew Big Red, then
so NASCAR literally is it's oval circuits.
I think that's the main thing. Is like, let's just go show. So see how many Bud Lights we can drink before we drive home. Yeah. And then go to church on Sunday.
Sometimes consistency is the best play, huh?
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Gareth Cliff Show. We are live this morning. I am in Cape Town. Ben is in the studio in Johannesburg. We got John van der Reet joining us a little bit later on, the author, obviously, of all the Spud books, which have been terrific and which have been turned into movies, very, very successful movies. I think he's probably the most successful fiction writer in South Africa in the last 20 years. I said this earlier.
Well, Gareth,
I haven't had any argument from anybody in the comments section.
Gareth, you're being
don't you think that's right?
You're being a bit harsh. I think News 24 definitely still takes that.
Ah.
I mean, talk about fact checks earlier with color. I think you were quite flippantly just easing into that. Got a whole team.
So Mapelo says, and I saw that we played a promo for the Let's Talk Men show with the doctors, which is awesome. If you haven't watched that, Mapelo says, I watched that episode of Let's Talk Men. Crazy stuff those doctors come across. It's a must watch or at least listen. Yeah. Sahel and the rest of those doctors, the things that those guys have to deal with is just, it's unbelievable. And your world will open up. You think the Epstein interview on Wednesday was something. You got to listen to this. Can we speak about shape-shifting, says Ravin. We can, but I don't know a lot about it. It seems to me like something you would have to be very, very high on drugs to see. I'm sorry if I'm going to be boring about this, but I'm a materialist and a realist. And I don't see how shape-shifting can actually happen. I don't know how it's possible. Maybe to the eye of the beholder, if the eye of the beholder happens to be swimming in psilocybin or LSD or dimethyltryptamine. But I can't imagine anybody who's totally sober being able to see someone shape-shift in real time before their eyes. I don't know how that's possible, Ravin.
Yeah, but I reckon there are demons that live amongst us. I really do. I mean, we saw it with Fauci. He's a fucking demon. And Epstein was another one. I read a story recently, Gareth, that in India, there was I think it was like 2006, it was a while ago, there was an 8-year-old kid who's essentially seen as the youngest serial killer in the world. He killed 3 fucking kids in the space of 2-3 months. You've got to be a demon at that age to actually physically and intentionally murder someone else.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to take your word for it. Barely Vocal Media says, Let's Talk Men is very cool. Great insights on that show. Barely Vocal Media also says, Joe Rogan's interview with Yeon Min is crazy. She escaped North Korea. The stories of what's happening there is mind-bending. China has a massive organ harvesting industry. Yes, I think that's a real thing. And I do think that human organs on the black market it's a serious going concern. There are people who pay a lot of money. If you're rich and you live in a first world country and your liver is caving in, or your heart doesn't work properly, or you need a new spleen or gallbladder or God knows what, and there's some poor person in a third world country who can be harvested, trust me, there's a guy who can make that happen. There's some kind of in-betweener who's going to facilitate through criminal means a trade in organs. You better believe it.
It's been happening for so long.
Supply and demand.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way that crooked Hillary is still using all the same organs as she did at the start of her life. There's no way.
Same with Bill.
Same with Bill. Bill. Listen, I was joking last night. We were at a dinner to celebrate someone's birthday. And I asked all the women at the table, and they were disgusted by this. I'm like, if you had to sleep with Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Bill Clinton, who would you choose?
Well, obviously Donald.
They weren't so committal. They were like, well, one of them said Bill, which I thought, oh, you're taking your life in your hands because you're not going to. I mean, Bill's going to go, I think we could do another round. I don't think you're tired. I think let's start again. Let's pretend that was just the opening act. You know, Bill, he's a horn dog. He could carry on all day. It came up because somebody said, do you think Melania and Donald love each other? And I said, look, I don't know.
Do you think any of your friends and their wives love each other? Fucking stupid thing to say.
I think Yeah, but I mean, that's a woman would ask that question. So I thought, let me apply my mind to this for a second. And I thought, I don't believe that love is part of their arrangement. I think Melania even wrote in her book, and I'm paraphrasing here, but I saw an excerpt from it where she said, first time I meet Donald, very good meeting. It was half business, half personal. I was like, yeah, we know what was discussed there. It was like, I'll tell you what you need to do. You're going to come over here. I'm going to take you away from horrible Slovenia. It's a shithole country. You're going to pull the plow there. Here, it's much better. I'll give you an apartment on Fifth Avenue. I'll give you endless amounts of spending. You can go crazy on Fifth Avenue. You can spend in every store. And she's like, okay, then occasionally I give you happy times. And that was the arrangement. I don't see a problem with that.
Modern day love
very
story.
Adult, very sophisticated. Yeah. Let's go. At least it's transactional and they're honest with each other. By the way, put up this picture with the plugs, James. This is so this passes for humor on the internet in 2024. Are you ready? Here are the plugs. One is male, one is female, and then the third plug I thought was quite that was an illustrative example. What are the plugs, James?
I'm not sure if Flex has those images that you speak of right now, Gareth.
Oh, for God's sake! I sent them to you this morning on WhatsApp, James. Are you doing this on purpose to irritate me?
James isn't in the room currently.
Okay. Have you got the P. Diddy picture where what he would look like in 1600? Oh, there he is. William Shakespeare. Ben, I don't know why you are the one who did this, but you have made me feel sorry for Justin Bieber. You've made me think that poor kid, and I always used to be like, ambivalent about Justin Bieber. I couldn't really care. I went to his concert and I missed out on interviewing him because I arrived late. So I've been like a kind of non-committal. I wouldn't say I was ever a fan. I wouldn't say I was ever not a fan. I just never thought about Bieber that much. And then when we were at lunch the other day, you said to me that poor guy, he's been like sodomized for hours and hours at Diddy's parties. And I suddenly thought, I mean, we don't know for a fact that happened, but I felt very sorry for him. I felt bad for Bieber.
Okay, yeah, maybe not my exact words, but but Gareth, I think he's a prime example of like fuck around, get fucked. Well, I don't think Bieber or any of these people knew how bad it really was. It's like, okay, I'm going to go to a party. Yeah, sure, I might take some drugs. Yeah, sure, I might meet some people. I don't think he had any idea that he was going to a room and guys are going to be dropping trowel and changing his level of innocence. I don't think anyone did, but it happened, and you can see there's a death in his eyes.
Yeah.
Like his soul was taken. It was absolutely taken, and that's what these demon celebrities are like. They do like we speak about harvesting of organs, which is a very real thing, but they harvest souls. They absolutely do. Yeah. And just look at Bieber. Like look at early day Bieber. I know he's young, but there's a vitality in that face. There's a sparkle of eye. You look at him now, it looks like he's just been asked to watch 7 kittens getting killed every day. Like that's how he wakes up. And that's because
shame. It's horrible.
That's because I think he was used.
No.
And
poor guy. I
feel
heard
sorry
a
for
horrible
that.
story last night about Rihanna. And apparently this is true. That when P. Diddy and Jay-Z basically took Rihanna, her father basically sold her to them. And they took her to a boardroom on the 9th floor of the building that Def Jam Records was in. And they made Rihanna sit in that boardroom. And she was like, I'm not going to sign this contract until I've had someone else look at it. I'm not a lawyer. I need to be able to speak to my people. And apparently Jay-Z said to her, there are 2 ways to leave this room. Either out of the window, and remember they're 9 floors up, or through the door. But if you're going to leave through the door, that contract better be signed. And that is why Rihanna, she uses the name Fenty for all of her beauty products and things, because she can't use the name Rihanna because everything about her is in that contract and they own her completely.
Yeah. It's
horrible.
That's so sad. But that is it. That is the Hollywood thing. That is celebrity.
I think there are a lot of people in the world who want to be famous, and they will do even if they're perceived to be famous, right? This came up in conversation last night too, is it's the desire to be thought of as successful and famous by the rest of humanity, even if you don't know these people. You want so desperately for them to think that you are famous and rich, that you will do terrible things. You will sell your soul. You will sign off and you'll sign away your rights to everything, including your own identity. And that it blows my mind. I mean, like, I've had this awesome career in South Africa. I've felt a little bit of what must be the drug that these guys feel of fame. You know, I got it in my 20s, got it out of my system by my late 30s. But I'm so glad that I've never been drawn to that the way some people have. You could see it in their eyes. Like you meet some people and you can just tell all they want is to be famous. And look at the Kardashians. You know, they come up all the time. That fucking mother of theirs, she was prepared to release embarrassing sex tapes of her daughter being porked. And I mean, like, how callous, how ambitious, how nakedly ambitious do you have to be to do that to your daughter? I mean, it's worked, right? If you want fame, they've got it. All the Kardashians and Jenners have got fame. She turned her husband into a woman. I mean, she's just the most evil. She's definitely an evil person. But the fame is the thing they all wanted, and she gave it to them, right? She sacrificed on the altar of fame. She got what she wanted. It's just something else.
Yeah, when you look back at it like that now, it's so weird to think, but they understood the game more than anyone else. Therefore, they got what they wanted. So, yeah, you know, is it worse than lawyers? Is it worse than other people who start companies who get huge amounts of money? It's just understanding what the game is. Yeah. And that is unfortunately, like they've summed up what the game is. Horrible thing to be participating in.
Let's wrap this question up with that Don Kitty's comments in the comment section. Lol, she turned her husband into a woman. That's the shape shifting that we requested.
Yes.
Okay, so that's quite enough.
So it is possible after all, Gareth.
All right, let me introduce or reintroduce someone who's been on my show before. I'm thrilled to say he is back with more than ever before. He is John van der Reet, South African author, actor, playwright. He's best known for the Spud series, which has sold over 500,000 copies just in South Africa. The series starting with Spud in 2005, followed by Spud the Madness Continues, that was 2007, and Learning to Fly in 2009. Then Exit, pursued by a bear in 2012. It's become a major, major publishing success. And Van der Reet also adapted Spud into a film, which was released in 2010 and did extremely well, starring John Cleese, Troye Sivan, with a sequel based on The Madness Continues, arriving in 2013. And then he holds a master's degree in drama and performance. So he's also a very, very smart man who was educated at Michael House. It's loosely based on his experiences there, but we won't say it's a word-for-word adaptation. And he's written something now called Spud the Reunion. And we're going to find out all about that. So first of all, John, it's nice to see you. I'm sorry I'm not in the studio with you this morning. How are you?
Hello, Gareth. It's great to see you, even on a screen in Cape Town. Fabulous.
So you're doing a tour around the country now for the release of Spud the Reunion. Obviously, people just couldn't get enough of the story. The characters were so well developed. They all were part of our lives. When you made the movies, they became even more a part of our lives. And I suppose it's just been like enormous pressure on you, almost like J.K. Rowling, to just keep the story of these people going, right?
You're absolutely right, Gareth. And that's part of why I stepped off the bus in 2013, because my life was just Spud, and I'm feeling it again now, right? I'm back and it's just Spud, media, launches, people, and it's wonderful. But I remember why I had to step off this bus. And also, I think, you know, after 8-9 years of doing the same creative venture, even very successfully, I'm sure you would have the same feeling. You have that feeling like you need to just try other stuff to keep developing as a human and as a creative person.
So, the big question then is, were the publishers kind of forcing you at gunpoint to do this? Or was it something that you had in the back of your mind and you were like, I can carry this story on and I can tell the conclusions, or at least the next chapter in every one of these characters' stories without it being too much of a burden?
Yeah, it wasn't.
Or did they say to you, listen, dude, there's such pressure, you have to do this?
No, it wasn't that at all. In fact, I'm actually working with a different publisher this time. So I approached them. I got the idea in COVID, where a lot of people had time in COVID just to think about stuff. I got the idea about a reunion, and it just sat well with me. I thought, this is a golden opportunity to go back. I'd had a good 7 years off from Spud now, so there was a curiosity about what I could find back in the space, and also a sense of Spud had never left me. I left Spud, but it was just wherever I went, people still spoke to me about Spud, and I got this feeling, Gareth, that he's going to outlive me. You know what I mean? When I'm 6 feet under, Spud's going to be still read in schools. So, yeah, I guess for those reasons. And I also felt creatively I had a something I could really work with here, an interesting topic. And as you said, going back, meeting these guys 10 years later.
Into the actual plot of the story. But I mean, this is something that I think a lot of us go through in our lives. And this is probably one of the reasons that you've been such an incredibly successful writer, is because you touch on those aspects of all of our lives, whether we went to Michaelhouse or just any other school, and the things that happen to us, the way we feel inside when so many of these life lessons come along. Now, this idea that they go to their 10-year reunion, and they would have made, Spud and the other characters, 28?
Yep.
In this version.
Yes.
And a 28-year-old is a totally different thing to an 18-year-old, which is where you left them last time.
That's correct.
How did you get your head around that? Because for you, that's also a long, long time ago, and maybe the memories at 28 have a different feel to them than the memories from school.
I would agree. I think those are all good points you made, and there was a sort of a neat segue, because I was away for 10 years and Spud was away for 10 years. But saying that, I really wanted to mine those late 20s years. I don't know how they were for you, Gareth, but for me, there was some struggles there as I approached 30. Career, I think if you're in a creative career, you perhaps the pressures to turn your career into a real successful career, or something that can obviously have longevity, is a big pressure. You're facing marital pressures, whether you're going to have kids, are you going to settle down? Basically, your youth is coming to a close, and people are expecting you now to settle down and make some adult decisions about your life. And obviously for Spud, this is very difficult because he is in the creative world and he's going through a bit of a rough patch. And so that sort of informs his starting point for the book. And really what I wanted to do with this story is try and return Spud to this time that was quite volatile for me. My theatrical career sort of broke through. Then I wrote Spud. I was caught up in the tsunami during that time. And before that, I'd had a bit of a rough time. So there was this patch of 4 or 5 years where so much happened in my life. And I because I use my life as fodder for Spud, that's why I also chose this era rather than, say, a 20th or a 30th anniversary. And also, I didn't want to really write a stocking filler. I wanted to almost revisit these guys like we were starting a new series from this point. Whether that happens or not, we'll have to see. But that's sort of the thinking I had, rather than just a one-off because I was missing it and I wanted a stocking filler for Christmas. It wasn't really that kind of intent.
Sorry, guys.
So did you have to? Yeah, Ben.
I know we're worlds apart here, so it's quite weird. But that's what I loved about all the books, is that you just got high school. Like, high school's a very weird thing, because when you're young, the world is strange. Yeah. You put into a situation where you're almost in prison, basically. So I always think high school was a bit like prison. There's hierarchies. There's ways that you survive. There's things that you do to get prominence. And the whole thing with a 10-year reunion is that you now have to do that even more so, because now you're posturing like, okay, well, I'm obviously a career person now. I'm obviously successful.
Yes.
I went from like scoring hot chicks to now like marrying some or that kind of stuff.
Yes. You're absolutely right. And I think you used the word posturing. And that's something that I think that 10-year reunion, everybody comes with a little front.
Completely.
Because nobody's actually that set at 28. I mean, there might be some people who have nailed it and got lucky. But if you're going to take like a crazy 8, Spud goes there thinking they all going to have creamed it and they're all going to be, sitting with their bum in the butter. And so that manifests this 1/3 life crisis almost in him, like some people call it a quarter life crisis. It's a sense of where's my life going? Is it time for a change? And then just this horror of having his failures reflected through the eyes of the crazy 8. And it's this sense of, I don't want to go. So, and a lot of people have this feeling about reunions. If their school years weren't fantastic, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I would not go there, at all. And then others are like, I think if they had friends at school, they're like, fabulous, let's go. Why would you not?
But I always remember, I've had a 10 and a 20 year. And again, I don't want to name names here, but I remember in my year, there was like the kids who weren't great at school, like at rugby and very popular, they are using this to say, look at me now.
That is the other thing.
And
you see,
but it's so evident though. You can feel it in the air.
And you see, that's it. It's all this posturing. And I don't know how you went, Gareth. I mean, you were successful in your 20s, so you would have probably been the star of your reunion if you went back.
I never went to any of them. I mean, you're absolutely right. And both you and Ben have like hit on something that I think lots of us think about. I'm still friends with the people that I was friends with and that I really liked at school. I still talk to them often. It's a very small number. It's not like all the people that you were at school with.
Right.
But I had zero desire, absolutely zero, to go to my 10, 20, or any other kind of reunion. What would it be now? It would have been
30.
It would have been about 20 years
25,
now.
30?
Maybe we'll get up to 30 in the next 10, but it's coming. My mother went, interestingly enough, to her 50-year reunion the other day, and there were enough people alive to make a quorum. I mean, like she was sitting there talking. She said to me, she looked around and said, who are these old fucking people? And then she realized she's one of them.
The 50th sounds like a good one to go to because I think everyone's chilled. You're in your late 60s now. There's nothing to prove, and if you did try and prove something at 67, you'd look an arse. So, that actually feels like
but
one
also,
I might go to.
At 70 years old, or whenever you go for your 50th, you'd be more than 70 years old. Then you just want to see who's still alive. And this is what I wanted to get to before Ben's question is like, did you feel the need to kill any of these characters off? And don't give away too much because I want people to read the book, obviously. But you've got amazing, there's Fatty. I mean, Fatty couldn't have lasted long because he was enormous. There's Vern. There's Rambo, there's Simon, there's Boggo. These guys, a lot of them were prime candidates. And my dad didn't go to any school reunions because most of his mates were dead. Motorbike accidents, drugs. So were you tempted to kill any off?
I wasn't because I wanted to use them all as a greedy writer, Gareth. But at the same time, I mean, I've heard that the guy who I based Pike on died in a motorcycle accident 3 years out of school. I've heard quite a lot of stuff about people who are either influenced or inspired. But obviously, that doesn't necessarily mean I want to take that. For example, if I write off my Pike because he was written off in history, then I don't have a sort of antagonist in my story to sort of rile up Spud at a certain moment. So it's not so much that, but what I have done is I've radically changed some of these characters that they are not the people you knew before. If you know what I mean, they are now, some of them are radically changed. For example, Fatty, just also emotionally changed, not as maybe a bit more grown up. And there's quite a fractious energy. And I think that felt right for me, that they wouldn't come back after 10 years and just be big buds talking about the old days. There's just a little edge, almost guys coming back with a chip on their shoulder. Hey, life was tough for me and it was because of you, Oaks, that it was tough. And I went through hell and, but of that coming back as well, which I think is quite interesting for this reunion.
So when it comes to process of these things, how different was it from your original books? I mean, because that was a very definite life stage, and this one's a bit more advanced life stage.
Yes.
Do you as a writer just love a certain process, or do you apply yourself per project?
You go per project. It's almost like the mood of each project demands, and the characters almost demand it. It's a weird thing, but once you start writing, they drive the action. It's not like you're going, for me at least, I'm not standing outside and going, okay, what am I going to do this and do that? Okay, yes, you plan that, but once they start to roll, and you're writing it, okay, and a Rambo's speaking to Spud or whatever it is, it drives itself forward. It becomes a self sort of manifesting entity, I find, where then you've got to control it rather than making it happen. You allow it to happen, but you've got to try and control what you are creating. I definitely felt there was a big change structurally between this book and the previous school series. They were a year in the life of Spud, right? This was really about a reunion weekend. 80% of the book is about this one weekend. So, previously structurally, I'd have lots of staccato breaks, tick, 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 which I think helped younger readers also stay in it. It's like you kind of break, new day, break, list here, list here, list here. And obviously I couldn't do that because you've only got literally 3 days you're coming, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 4 days. And so it has a different feel because the structure is different. I think it's closer to a more conventional novel than the original diaries, which look more like diaries. It's almost like somebody's bought a big diary and he's just gone, And also what happens is Reunion is so busy that Spud has to catch up in his diary at certain stages, like 5 or 6 in the morning when and he's only gone to bed at 3 in the morning, and then somebody's tried to wake him up, and then he's now writing in his diary about the previous day. Whereas at school, he was very much a witness to things going on around him, sort of blow by blow. So there's some subtle differences, and I think when people read this book, some people will be quite surprised because particularly the people going, I'm expecting it to be just like the old Spud books. Because I've grown up too, and so has Spud. So there's that double edge.
Gareth mentioned
a lot has changed. A lot has changed too, because I noticed in the book, which I got the other day. And by the way, our producer James is like your biggest fan in the world. He's an absolute Spud.
Yeah, I know. I chatted to him, and he was.
I haven't seen him as excited to have a guest in the studio than this for months.
He made me coffee, and he was so friendly. Really was. What a champ.
Yeah, well, he's got to do his bit. I mean, listen, you many people think that you're an absolute wonder because you've written these brilliant books, which have given them. It's almost like this is what's so great about fiction, right? Is you create a world that people can go into when their own lives are as horrible as James's. They can escape into your world.
You're right,
but in this book, you talk about a couple of things that are different. One of them is the phone, right?
Yes.
Phones, the nonstop messages,
yes.
The texting, the way relationships have changed.
Yes.
And then this thing, which I think hit on, which is such a genius move, is anxiety. So Spud has got anxiety again.
Yes.
Every fucking person I meet under the age of 40 in the world right now is suffering from anxiety. It gives me anxiety. I can't do that. It makes me anxious. What a clever move to give Spud the anxiety. This is very, very clever.
It is. And it's Gareth, I don't know what your views on it, why the under 40s suffer from anxiety. But I do think that they don't have the coping mechanisms that the old school people had. I don't know if you agree with that.
Correct.
Almost the way you brought up.
You'll get no fight from us on that point.
Okay, all right. So I'm speaking to agreement here. Yeah. But it does.
We're Gen X. We're like you, John. Don't worry.
Yeah, exactly. We sort of were brought up, but there wasn't facilities and stuff. You were just let to carry on, rough and tumble. But it's a different tech world now, completely different tech world. I mean, it's hard to see how people can actually maintain their mental health with such a tech overload in their lives every single day.
Well, in many ways, anxiety is becoming. It's like the new smoking. It's bad for you, but everyone's kind of doing it.
Yes.
You got to take these breaks. It's becoming like that.
Yeah.
If you wanted to make it completely 2024, they must all have a vaping problem.
Oh yeah,
and then we'll be complete.
But you know, just going back, having Gareth, your point, like having a Nokia, all right, your little old Nokia, little blue Nokia, and Spud's looking at it, and just also, you know, think about it, they all get to the reunion, they start to meet up, and then there's an awkward moment. Out come the phones, and everyone's looking at their old texts and stuff, you know. And I suddenly realized, God, what did we do before phones when we were awkward? You know, like now it's just such a thing. You just whip out your phone and you look at it, even if you have nothing in your brain that you want to look at. You're just like, okay, it's an awkward moment. I'm just going to fill this time. What did we do before? Did we just look awkward? Did we just stand there and just?
It's such a good question.
I think people used to. It depends. I mean, in lifts, people have just always awkwardly kind of shifted around and pretended that the other people weren't there.
True.
But I think we also used to talk to each other a bit more. And I see this. You know, part of the story is obviously his relationships, in particular with women. And I think a lot of people have lost the ability to have conversations.
Yes.
And I don't mean just, you know, the small talk of like, oh, the traffic was bad today, how's the weather? But people have also forgotten how to kind of make a difference in someone else's life, or to make an impression, or to just entertain someone for 2-3 minutes if that's all you've got.
Yes.
Because we're so used to going to our phone, the moment that we feel, the conversation's died, there's a lull. Spud obviously wrote diaries, and I think for many people, kind of having your personal logbook was an important part of this too. Now, of course, people's personal logbooks are Instagram and TikTok and these kinds of things. So,
and it's
maybe we've always done the same thing. It's just technology has made it easier for us to do it now.
It is, Gareth, but there's a different thing. In our time, we were trying to connect with people. I'm not trying to say that the new world is bad, but I'm just saying the new world, the way you connect is almost in a showy off way.
Yes.
It's like, zhink, look how cool I look, and zhink, look at me, and look how brilliant this is, and look what I've just got. And it's and I can see it because I'm now back on socials to publicize this book. And I see myself doing the same thing, you know. Oh, there's a great pic of me with a nice crowd at a bookstore. Oh, lovely to see you. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. And you're playing doing the same dance.
Well, it's quite performative. We see it from the politicians down. Most things are performative.
Yes.
You've got to package that moment to get the eyeball.
Correct. But that's also where our human connections are going, into this performative space of like, yo, sister, and again this, and it's like a bit of a like you do a performance for each other.
Yeah.
It's like birds.
But
exactly, flickering the feathers.
I think what you were always very good at, and I have no doubt that this new book, which I haven't finished yet, but what the new book will also do, you've been really good at like telling the embarrassing stories.
Yes,
like, this is the shit that I think made people go, wow, okay. John is not just writing a good story here; he's also taking us into very uncomfortable places. I mean, you know, Spud kind of growing up and going through puberty.
Yeah.
Very few people have articulated as well how awkward it is for boys in a school to kind of come to terms with the things that are happening in their lives, how they deal with women or girls at that stage, and how they actually get relationships going. And I suppose in this book too, you found opportunities to tell stories that only Spud would know, that are so embarrassing, that are so awful, so revealing and humiliating that you can't help but love him, right?
Yes. And it is that, because he actually is quite self-deprecating in many ways, and he's brutally honest about himself, hard on himself. And he always has been like that. And I do think that's the gateway. I think if Spud started showing an arrogance, self-love, a sense of, I've got it together, I've worked it out, I do believe there'd be a sort of falling out of love with him. There's something about the perennial struggler in him, whether it be a late developer, whether it be struggles with finding a meaningful relationship, or dating, or whatever it is, dealing with his family who are difficult to deal with, and all these other matters. It feels like this is why people love Spud. And I think they see a little window into their own selves, because many boys would have gone through puberty, or all boys go through puberty, but they don't really share that experience. It's a kind of private experience. And if you read Spud, then you would suddenly realize that this shared, it kind of like it takes the edge off like the shame of growing up, and there's always the shame of like, you look like this and you don't look like this, and
especially
this
in a boarding school.
Oh, in a boarding school, it's just magnified because it's like, so they'll just go on about it all the time, and it's just unrelenting. I remember back then, that's where my books are different. The Crazy Eight back then would have just been unrelenting, almost unreadable, how they would have interacted with Spud, and so I suppose there's also that blending of that. You've got to keep the authenticity of what feels like an authentic boarding school experience, but you also, I didn't want to have an F-bomb every 4 words because that would have been true to school,
Sure.
But then you'd lose an entire side of your readership, and also become monotonous. So there were all these things that I have to adapt on the way, and when I look back and people say, well, is it true? You go like, well, it's based on something like that, but there's so many manipulative elements that you use, to create it.
When you speak about the authenticity there, how was the whole movie making thing for you? Because as a writer, you have the control, right? It's just you. That's the thing. Now you've got other people who are going to have a shared vision, I would imagine. Like, you don't have to out anybody here, but I mean, what was it like for you to now see it in a whole different world with other people doing things?
Yeah, it was quite amazing, terrifying at times for that release, where as you say, I was no longer in control of it. I was on the film set. I was, in the meetings with the big boys. I was, I was very much central to the development of it. But in the first two, I didn't write the script. I wrote the third one, and then the fourth one, it wasn't filmed because Troy chose to go become a pop star, and felt like the brand.
No, he's gone ahead and he's gone ahead and done absolutely nothing with his life, hasn't he?
What a slacker! Yeah, and quite incredible to watch that. And it's almost like surreal that he was in the movie. He just seems like a different human being now. I mean, you were talking about the Kardashians before. Yeah. That's also a guy who seemingly has tapped into something on a higher power there. Just the way he. From even when he was Spud, just all those followers he had on Insta, or what was it, YouTube, and
I remember you brought him in for an interview with me, and his mom came with.
Yeah,
you remember?
Yes, his mom went everywhere with him. She was like his minder.
Yeah,
like nothing. Like she was a tough bird. Like she'd managed him since a little bit like the Kardashians' mother, but not on the same level. But a sense like she'd managed him as the whole way, and I think knew his value.
No, he was already a star at a very, very young age, and it was a great casting move to put him in there. I obviously, there's a lot that's changed here over the years, and I wondered if a movie were to be made of this book that you've just written, because I think for nostalgia, if no other reason, it would be great. I just wonder how many of those people would still be able to participate.
Well,
because you've got, obviously Shelby's no longer around.
So sad that
she died. She was, terrible, terrible story. And I know people who knew her very well.
Yeah, and
terrible. And Cleese is so old now. I don't know if Cleese could come here and put together a sentence.
You know what? That's it. Yeah, that's it. Look, last night we were at the Santon Theatre on the Square doing the launch, and I met old Rambo. He came dancing up onto the stage, and he looks just like he did before, but he tells me he's got 5 kids.
Wow.
And he's 33.
Sven.
So, yeah, Sven. So,
that just sounds like the character from the book.
I know. I mean, but like if I did that at the reunion, nobody would go, come on, Thunder Ray, that's pushing it, But yeah, I would love it. I mean, I've had a little bit of a knock about somebody looking at it, thinking about a series potentially starting again and going all the way through. People on the tour now have been talking to me a lot about, will there be a movie? Just like you mentioned, I think a reunion movie is a nice idea. Just it's a concept, a type concept you can sell. But this always requires producers. My great producer Ross Garland and his associate Brad Logan. Ross is now a lawyer in Australia. He's moved there with his kids, so he's out of the film game. If he was still in the film game, it would be probably a much easier flick, and we'd probably already be talking about it. But so it does. It's going to need some producer who's got a vision to come in and do that. But I would love there to be a movie and then potentially a series down the line. But let's see what happens. It's never in my hands, this kind of thing, you know.
I think it's bloody amazing. Listen, you've created a universe, and I said earlier, you're probably, I don't want to turn this into competition, but you're probably the most successful fiction writer in the last 20 years in South Africa, which puts you on a level with people. And I know you haven't made the money that she has, but you've done okay out of this. I mean, I love that you keep writing books, even if they are forcing you to. But you do remind me a little bit of J.K. Rowling. She created this universe that she's expected to lord it over. And while yours isn't mythology and magic spells and that kind of thing, there is an element of kind of the canon and the lore, L-O-R-E, of Spud, which people are just head over heels in love with. So you are the guy they go to. They're like, is it possible that this one might have been in a relationship with that one? Is it possible that this one would have become, you know, an accountant? You have to answer these questions. What are the weirdest questions people have asked you?
I get weird ones, hey? I mean, like, now I get asked all the time, are you the guy in the book? Like the cover, right? So he's about 25 years younger than me. I'm an old bully now, right? But I get funny things like, are you Spud? Have your balls dropped? You know, questions that are just you're like, I don't even know where that comes from. But, you know, they're asking you genuinely, have your balls dropped, you know, sir? And it's just.
Oh, so it was a student asking you that.
But then also they also want to know if I've got together with the mermaid, you know, like how they like to think that my love life is the same as Spud's love life, you know. But I mean, you mentioned Shelby, and she was one of my favorite people from the cast up there. You know, she was the only person in the entire Spud cast that kept a genuine diary. So she chatted to me a lot about it. She was a diary keeper. So I think, you know, people got the sense she was a model and you know, just a sort of it girl. But she was actually very almost Spud-like in a weird way, that she reflected on the world. She had insecurity. She was quite shy and quite quiet, and then came alive on screen. But that was a real shock for everyone in the Spud firmament, you know, to hear that news. But yeah, sorry, just to go back to that.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, you know, to die at 32 and we always get more sad if someone's beautiful and they die.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a human thing. Right?
I know.
If someone terribly ugly dies, nobody gives a shit.
No,
it's amazing. We just move on. We move on very quickly.
Gareth,
we're like, oh well, they were very ugly. They were going to die at some point.
Gareth, you've got
something about beauty that we want to keep it forever.
I hear you. You got like a laser knife, bud. You just go straight through the skin and you go zoom into humanity. You should be writing books too. You know that if you could get off the screen and the radio and get into the pages. But I promise you would have a hell of a book on you.
Trust me. I would be no competition for you, sir. You're the guy you've found your rhythm, and you're damn good at this.
Thanks,
so
mate.
Have you done what a lot of other brilliant writers have done? Have you decided, right, the next thing I'm doing is going to have nothing to do with Spud. I don't care what the publishers tell me. I'm going to write I don't know, some kind of like Norwegian noir murder mystery or something. Is that something you've done to yourself, where you suddenly feel like you need to kick the Spud thing completely after this?
Gareth, I did that before I wrote this book. In that gap between 2013 and 2022, I tried to work on this radical, set in London, completely mad. Oak gets viral fame. I was going for something very, very ambitious, because it was less like I wanted to make sure this was going to be the next bestseller or anything like that. I wanted to just play and allow myself to explore, not have all that pressure of publishing and deadlines and all the rest. And also the pressure of having something that's a known entity. So I did work on that, but I think I kind of got myself lost along the way a little bit. I think I got too ambitious. I think I got too clever. I think the writing is clever, but I don't know if it all holds together. So I have done that. And then I almost felt like after that, I was ready to come back to Spud, because I've been dancing in the stars for a long time. And now after that experience, I less want to go to my next one and experiment. And I'm looking at something else. Like, I would like to write something that was a historical moment and recreate it, a big historical moment, but to recreate it from the small people around it, and almost rather than looking at it from the sort of top down, you're looking at it from the underneath. But it's to find that story, something that is capable of having comedy, drama, and moving you and so forth. So that would interest me. I don't think I'm ever going to try and write a literary type novel. That's not my drive at all. But I certainly feel comedy will be a part of it in whatever phase it has to be. I'm a comedic writer or humorist writer. But we shall see. As I said to you, if this does well, it might just open the door for another little series run of an adult series here to cover some of these very interesting times that happened to me around that age. So let's see. And the lovely thing is that the readers almost decide this. And obviously, I have to sell a lot of copies to get to that point of going, I'm going to write a sequel. It's not just like, okay, you can sell 5,000 or 10,000 copies and that's a great success. And now you're going to, it needs to sell big and abroad too, and potentially attract some sort of film or movie interest too, for me to feel like it's worth reinvesting a lot of effort into a 2 or 3 book series now. You know what I mean?
So 2 quick things on that note. First of all, the grandmother is still alive. Wombat.
Yes.
She's more senile than, she was already fucked in the head by the last time we checked in with you. How could she still be going? Is she walking around in circles?
She is. Well, she is getting. I think you'll see that she's changed as well. Like, she was more together. Let's say she's gone from like 75 dementia to 85 dementia. She takes herself off on walks, but gets lost. She gets finds the clicker and goes out the gate. She's mostly confused now, whereas in the old days, in the earlier Spud, she was how do we say, fairly together but then losing it in spots. Now she's kind of mostly losing it,
and every now and then she said something that was really, really true and prophetic and or wise. And now you're saying she's just totally demented. She's like Joe Biden.
Yeah, I'd say she is a bit like when Joe was getting all creaky. I was like, gee, this is a bit like Wombat now. But you know what? She still has those moments where she has impact on a scene. So it's not just like she's talking rubbish in the corner. Something she says, like, for example, when Spud receives his invite to the reunion and it's in June, Wombat gets the idea that she's got to go back to school. And they try and convince her, no, don't worry. And she then thinks, no, her maths was terrible. Now she's worried about her maths. So there's a sense of she heightens the moment, but she does it in her own way, obviously. And just to have that complete line where you've got somebody who's like 85 and then you're dealing with younger people all the way back. It just opens the door for readers of all ages to read Spud, to from last night or any of my launches, you can see there's like kids of like 11, 12, and then there'll be folk in their 70s and even 80s with all the mix in between. And I think those characters, have helped do that.
So have you sent a copy of the reunion to Cleese and to Troy and to some of the others?
We are sending one to Troy, but it's going to go past via his mum in Australia first because he's in LA. I don't have his address. I will send one to John Cleese when I've got finished the tour and stuff like that. Even just with a little message to say, just in memory of us from South Africa here. I mean, he loved coming out here, and that was such a thrill. I always had this feeling he was going to do one film and then bail. But the irony is when Troy didn't want to do the last one and was greenlit, everybody was there. Cleese was ready to come out. He just loved it. He loved the cast. He loved Cape Town. He loved being in South Africa, loves this country. And he loves young people. He doesn't like old people. Like, Cleese won't ever have friends that are 70s, 80s, 90s, He's like...
No one likes old people. They smell of wee. It's not nice to be around.
Garrett,
John, why didn't you guys just recast Spud? I mean, was it that much of a... Would it have been such a clanger to have just said, we're going to use someone else? Do you think the audience would have been pissed off because they got so used to Troy?
I wanted
was the final kind of spanner in the works?
Yeah, I wanted to. Hey, I wanted to change him, and I said, let's do it. Let's get a South African boy in here and just slot him into the crazy 8. But Ross and Brad, I think, thought it wasn't a good idea. I think they felt like Spud was, after 3 films now, was the the Spud, you know, and also the way they'd marketed the films with his face, you know, driving it really. I just think they felt they'd lost their golden star. And you just imagine that launch, and afterwards, everybody would talk to you about was, where's Troy? Why is Troy? And, you know, why is he not here? And the poor pressure on the new Spud to try and crack it. So I think for those reasons, now I wish they had, because now you would have completed that in film, which now feels like there's always going to be one that we don't film. Because if you get the age of this cast now they 28, ready for the reunion. So if you did film that would be great. But you're never going to film that unless you go back with a new cast and start again, a series or something like that. But I was a bit disappointed because I thought the script for the fourth film was great because it was a final ending. It closed that story. So what we don't have with the films is a closure film, a film that ends the school series. You know, it ends on a note of learning to fly where he's going into his matric year. You know what I mean? So that's my only regret from that, but nothing I could do.
I think it's just absolutely great that you have written another book. People have been hungry for it. I agree with your publishers that you should have extra pressure put upon you to keep on delivering into this universe. So sorry, that's you've done this to yourself. You've brought this punishment upon yourself. Keep writing. Okay,
thank you, Gareth. And it's a lovely punishment. I adore it. Don't worry.
All right, listen, John, lovely to see you. And I'm so sorry I'm not there in person. Please, for God's sake, sign James's book. Otherwise, you'll never, ever get over it. And thank you for looking after things in the studio for us. Ben, we will be back on Monday at 6 a.m. Don't miss the opportunity to get hold of Spud the Reunion, which is available now in good bookstores. And John has done a couple of launches. Are you still doing Cape Town and Durban, right?
No, I've done Durban. I'm doing, I've still got one at Joburg, EB, Bedford tomorrow. And then we're going to Cape Town on Monday, V&A Waterfront as well, and Cape Talk Studios. I'm doing two launches there.
Magic. So if people want to see you in person, those are the only opportunities.
I will be publicizing.
Where do you live? Where do you spend most of your time now?
I still live in Durban, in the house that Spud bought me. My Spud Riches bought me a 4-bedroom house in Durban near the university in Glenwood, and I still live there. And that's where I've written Spud the Reunion. And I've got I've got my own study, and we just love our house, and it's 100 years old. It's one of those old Durban houses with high ceilings and all the rest. And
beautiful.
Yeah, so we're happy there.
I love it. Well, it's also good to catch up with you, and thank you very much for coming into the studio this morning.
Thank you,
All right,
Gareth.
everybody. We will see you on Monday at 6 o'clock. Be good. Ciao.
Stay tuned, because Stairway to Stardom is next with Frank Massey.
On the stairway to stardom, you see tomorrow starts today. On the stairway to stardom, we're here to brighten up your day. We've got singers and dancers and actors performing for you. But